I like being seen. I was recently called a low-level emo Bond villain from somebody on YouTube. I thought that was an interesting
That's a
critique.
compliment.
That's what I thought. I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
mind being a Bond villain. I'll take that. That's
yeah,
okay.
and also at this point, emo has just got such a vast history that like, is that a diss? Is that a compliment?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't think.
like, what are we even talking about here?
Yeah, I took it as a compliment. I
I
thought it was
would,
fun.
yeah.
Well, Jack, it is so awesome to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having
I
me.
can't wait. I can't wait to hear more about the new album and about you in particular. I thought we'd start there before we get to the new album, which I did listen to. I thought it was terrific. Due out
Thank
March
you so
8th.
much.
What's your story? Where did you get started? When did you find music, or how did it find you?
I was kind of always around in my house, but I remember my dad studied guitar with Reverend Gary Davis, so he played like ragtime guitar,
Yep.
and so he always played guitar around the house. And so I started playing maybe like 11, 12, somewhere in there. And then around 13, 14, I started writing. And then around 15, it was a real turning point where kind of like that's when I started doing like little tours and playing out with my band. And that's when I really, we say?
You at 15 you were touring, so you were
Yeah.
going out. Wow.
There's some older guys in the band, so they were able to drive us around. But at that point I realized I got just really invested in New Jersey and the local scene, and kind of that's when for me music went from like uh something I did at home to an actual lifestyle. And that's a
Yeah.
big turning point when you start to understand and invest in the lifestyle.
Right. It becomes something you need to do, not something you necessarily want to do.
Yeah. And it becomes a way of life, and you see other people who do it as a way of life, not just who
Yeah.
do it for fun. And yeah, you just start to I just then started to be surrounded by people who um did that all the time, and
Right.
it wasn't and especially the generation I was growing up in and the culture I was growing up in, it was very like get a real job energy. So it
Yeah.
was super important for me to have all those examples of people in the scene who that's all they did.
Did you expect success from the start?
No, I always I just came up in this way of thinking like you're just lucky if you get to play, and
Yeah.
not really about that. And we kind of have each other, and pretty much at I was lucky because I could live with my parents, but I was pretty resigned to being considered whatever the definition of loser was in my world that I grew up in, whatever middle class New Jersey world idea of loser was. But no, I was pretty like financially unsuccessful until I didn't move out or really make any money until I was like 26.
Yeah. Were you
Um,
had you already started in fun at that time? Was that project started or
that
no?
had just gotten going, and that's when fun started to actually like get going to the point where I wasn't losing money. Uh, but I was pretty like I wore that like a lot of armor though, like all those years. Like I was so proud that my life decisions, I was gonna had nothing, but was really um proud of what I was doing and believed in it,
What's
especially because my generation was sort of like before the bubble of like jobs in college burst. So like all my friends were like getting jobs and like affording, to have a life.
It's funny you mentioned Armor because one of the things that I thought through listening to the new album was that it was very vulnerable and honest to me. I just thought lyrically it was very just felt deep to me.
Yeah, it's kind of all you have when you're making an album is to tell your story,
Yeah.
whatever that is at the moment. Um, it's quite literally all you have. I mean, when everything boils down and everything else drifts away, it's like, what is this person going through? What do they feel like, and what do they sound like? And so I always just try to protect that like crazy, like the lyrics and the stories. Just make sure that those aren't being affected by anyone, but just what I'm feeling.
What do you think is harder, producing a record for somebody else or producing your own?
They're very. I was literally about to say something so stupid. I was about to say they're so different and similar. which is so dumb, but it's what comes to mind because there's this funny thing where it's like you're sort of physically doing the same thing
Yeah.
and mentally that part of you is doing the same thing, but then there's a part I don't know if I have a good answer for this. I wouldn't be able to say which one's harder. They're
Yeah.
so inherently linked, but I guess the big difference is, when I'm working with somebody else, I can have these very intense, clear thoughts of this is what I think of this. It's not my life and my lyric, so I can just say, oh, this is better than this. This feels like this, blah blah. Blah. And when you're writing things that you've personally lived and experienced, it gets a little bit more. It's like you have less tools to
Yeah.
like get through the brush and get to the other side of figuring it out, and that's kind of the glory of it too. But
Do you
also,
think
but I have a producer, not add sometimes with me when I'm making Bleachers albums because I need that bouncing board.
are you more critical of yourself when you're doing it, when you're producing your own records, as you
No,
then get
it's not that I'm more
somebody else's,
critic.
or
It's not more critical. It's just you have. It's like you have less faculties to see things clearly because you're just weighed down by it literally being you.
yeah,
Um, so it's just more. It's just like a bit of a stranger process.
right.
It's more elusive, I would say, when you're doing it yourself.
When you are producing an album, whether it's yours or somebody else's, can you tell when you've got an actual hit record? Can you hear a song and go, "This is a thing,"
I can
versus
hear
one?
something that I think should be a hit.
Yeah,
I can't say, oh, this is. I think if you know something is going to work, then you've reduced it to like its time period.
right,
So I think the feeling you're describing when I have it is more just like when I love something so much and is more like, oh, this should be a song that captures the attention of a lot of people at once. But that's also like, I think there's all these like weird mythologies about like the math of hits and how things work, and it's all bullshit. It's just like hit songs are just like songs that people like, and
right.
then they become hit songs. And then because they're hit songs, everyone acts like there was some formula there. But there's every day or every week there's a song that jumps out and becomes a hit that wasn't made by anyone or you know
Yeah,
doesn't follow any path or algorithm. I try to just like remove any thought and just be like, what are the songs that I love? Like what are the songs that if I'm picking a single or something like that, or betting on a song to be the one that I'm introducing as a front door to an album to a lot of people. It's just a song that I find to be really exciting off the bat.
yeah, yeah. You've produced some pretty big albums. You're an 8-time Grammy winner. Of course, you produced a couple records for Taylor Swift, the latest 1975 record as well. I've seen both of those artists this year on tour,
Oh,
and I
cool.
think both of them do a great job of, sure I'm going to say this right, sort of creating an experience at a show. It's not just a concert. You really feel like you are a part of it.
Yeah.
And I wondered for Bleachers, when you go on tour this year, what that show looks like. And do you think about that part of it as well when you're up there?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've played and toured my whole life, kind of before anything. So
Yeah.
in many ways, that's the starting point. And yeah, it's just you know there's different ways of thinking about it, and there's just some of us who have this idea, like the ones you mentioned,
Yeah.
and myself and how I grew up. That's just sort of like when you're on stage, it's the last night on earth. There's no tomorrow, and you deliver every show. If you're going to gather people like that, like nothing else exists. That's just how I grew up playing. That's how I feel when I'm playing, and so the show always ends up reflecting that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing you. You're not coming to North Carolina in this first stretch, but I'm
I
hoping there's.
promise I will. My wife is from North Carolina,
Oh, wait, where's she from?
Nashville, and
Oh, yeah. Beautiful
and I
place.
really messed up by not putting it in the routing. And I love it. And I spend a lot of time there. I'll be there over Christmas. Like it's just a
Oh,
big North Carolina is a big part of my life.
awesome. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you on the road. Hopefully, that second round will take you through
I
here.
promise I won't screw up twice.
Awesome. Well, Jack Antonoff, thank you so much for giving us some time. Great
Yeah,
to meet
great to
you.
chat. Thanks for having me.
And
And
congrats on the new
and
album. Bleachers out March 8th.
yeah, and low rent emo Bond villains forever or whatever it was.
Thanks, Jack. Take care.
Take care.